Hey friends, Caleb from Zoe here, just with a real quick update on the Exploring More podcast. You may have seen that this episode dropped at 5 a.m. on Wednesday morning. That will be the rhythm every week. Moving forward, we will be dropping on Wednesdays in the morning, so it's available as soon as you're up and starting your day. And we hope that it's your midweek encouragement on Wednesdays. So tune in to this episode. It's a good one. I hope you enjoy this week's episode of the Exploring More podcast.
With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoe's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more.
Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. Michael Thompson, hanging out with S.J. Jennings.
Just finishing up setting my roster for fantasy football this week.
Yeah.
Getting into the playoffs.
S.J. has some new life, as he thinks, because he's made the playoffs, which is good.
Made the playoffs, yeah.
We have nine teams in our league, and 8 of them make the playoffs, and S.J.'s number 8.
Actually, it's 8 teams and 7 make it. Yeah.
So,
I had to beat engineer Andy Poe twice.
Engineer Andy Poe, yeah.
Yeah, I had to beat him twice.
Yeah, which, just to digress even more, which, as the league commissioner...
Any given Sunday.
The league commissioner actually filled out Andy Poe's roster a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I wonder which weeks.
The weeks that I won? Why would I do that?
Maybe.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
No, I just didn't want anybody to get an easy win.
But, yeah, hope you're having a great holiday season. Lots of interesting things going on in the world, and exploring more. We are in the process, in the journey of looking at Wild at Heart's new series.
Yeah, man.
And
Some
great stories. Well done.
Mm-hmm.
Raise a glass, what is that green stuff? Raise some green stuff to John Eldridge.
AG1.
They're not our sponsor.
Not yet, but maybe we can tag them.
Work a deal.
We'll see what happens.
But props to John Eldridge and the Wild at Heart crew and these guys. Mark, who we've listened to and commented on. Even John's story. It's just good. It's good to get back and to be back into what we believe is a core part of the masculine journey of restoration, of healing, is your story. Do you know your story? And these guys have done a phenomenal job telling their stories. Very vulnerable, very, I'd say these are not actors. These are not made-up stories.
No, though you can tell they've told their stories a few times.
Yeah.
They do a great job.
And the beauty of, guys like Andy and Caleb,
Yeah.
They, through the editing process, have done a phenomenal job. So we're going to look at Pablo today in just a little bit, and some of his story, and just our reaction and response in this series, responding to Wild at Heart, the new series. And what I also love about, as I think we've mentioned, I love, in my story, Wild at Heart's was a significant early 2000s, and I would say Zoe is a result of that book, Ransom Heart at the time, then getting out there to John Eldridge's conferences with his team, and just starting this process that we're actually getting to see in these different men.
Yeah.
Reflecting, looking back, I was just about 30, I'm 60, so I was about 38 first time I stepped in. So very, very, very
so interesting. I was 38.
38
when I came to Top Gun, I was 38.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. And I think there's something about that age of late 30s, early 40s, maybe even in 50s. When we look at the crowd that we get to talk to, and the guys that we get to run with, it's about right. Late 30s. It's not only, but through the 50s, maybe early 60s. I'm 60 now, and just there's enough mileage to have a lot to look at.
Yeah.
and there's enough questions that have not gotten answers from the life that we've been living, and I mean
from the ways that we've been trying to answer them.
Yes, trying to work the answer. So this is exciting for me. I love it, SJ. I'm glad you're here as always, and we're going to continue with the Wild at Heart series. This one's on with Pablo in just a minute. We'll be right back on the Exploring More podcast.
Heart of a Warrior is definitely a place where I feel like men can come as they are, right? So inviting a man to come as they are and to find out that there's more for them, right? That God has more in store for them, and more in store in the sense of things that maybe they haven't yet known or uncovered, I think is why I would invite another man to Heart of a Warrior, to welcome them into a brotherhood where they can feel like they're not alone in a world where we often feel like we're the only ones going through something. So just that simple invite has the opportunity to change the course of another man's story drastically. So that's why I would invite a man to Heart of a Warrior.
Welcome back to the Exploring More podcast, and love that advertisement. That's one of our own about the Heart of a Warrior encounter in March. And interestingly, in every one of these stories, there's a book, right? There's a man. Mm-hmm. Sooner or later, there's a book, and then later than that comes a weekend.
Right.
All of these men stepped into an encounter type weekend, and it's where we learned it. It's the format and the space that we attended, and then that we replicated in many ways, and then we started to own ourselves in the story of Zoe. Mm-hmm. So creating environments where men can get away with God and process their story and the healing that we all need, so that we can become more of who we truly are. Just want to say you're invited, you're encouraged, and we would love to host you, have you get away with God at our encounter weekend in March. So
I would add the typically what we see is that guys find the book, and then it stirs some things up, and then come to a weekend to further process some of the things that got stirred up. Now, it doesn't always happen that way.
But that's typical.
But that's pretty typical, yeah. A lot of times guys come to the weekend because they're invited or dragged there by their buddies, and then, oh, wait, there's a book that goes along with this?
More and more, there's these guys that are, wonderfully creating circles and spaces like we did, years ago, still do, where their friends can come and you got to come see this, kind of thing. You got to
experience it for yourself.
Yeah. So the alumni are doing a great job of bringing men into that space. So, anything you want to say about Pablo before we first impressions? I mean, overall, what we're about to step into, because we're gonna look at some clips like we did with the first episode of Mark. We pulled a few clips that we want to talk about, but anything overarching about this particular story?
Yeah, what's interesting is for me, I would say for Mark and his story, especially regarding his childhood and his relationship with his parents and that sort of thing, I really related to him in the just stay, don't cause trouble, stay helpful, be obedient, that kind of deal. And then in this one, it's, with Pablo, there's definitely a lot of parallels in our stories. So, it's interesting that Mark, I resonated with his childhood, and Pablo resonating with his 20s, 30s, the way my 20s and 30s did not go well.
Yeah.
And so, we'll see.
We'll see.
But I love his heart, and I just, I can't remember his wife's name right now, but having her on there was brilliant, and just seeing the other side of, some of the decisions we make as men, and the fallout and the effect that can have on people was it's a guy can share that in his story as he shares his story,
Yeah.
but to actually interview or have the person on film that was affected by that
Yeah.
is important in the storytelling.
Yeah. Agreed. When you said the word decisions, I don't chuckle, and I'm not like rolling my eyes, but there's something that word, how that word affects me when I think about my own story, my own life, and the hundreds and thousands of men that we've had the privilege of working with or coming alongside, and here's my reaction. Yeah, did you really have a choice there? Did you really have a decision? Could you have really gone left instead of right? And I think that is a phenomenal exploration. When we are in the time right now, bro. This just came to me of betting is like out. This is not a Vegas thing anymore.
Oh no,
this is
it's
not.
all on
You
your
got to
phone.
find some bookie. We've got some of the actors and retired athletes that are pushing these. So back to being a betting man. What's the over under on you had a choice?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I'm not sure it's 50-50.
No way.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way. And it goes back to this idea of when we looked at Mark's life, there was a setup. There were things going on with his grandmother and just things that were shaping him to see the world and to live with a certain kind of belief system that no matter how much you could have even told him, that's not true. Oh, yeah, it is. The world's flat.
Yeah.
My grandma said so.
What's so interesting about...
My dad said so. My grandfather said so.
Yeah. What's so interesting about Pablo's story, too, is that he was bound and determined to not be his dad.
Right.
And even when he knew he was doing things that were leading him down the very same path, he still couldn't stop himself.
Yeah. Yeah. So even as another part of intrigue, I think we're talking about generational curses. We're talking about family of origin. We're talking about
vows.
The sins of the father.
Yeah.
I mean, we know, guys, that when you start to really get into the, not eHarmony, what's the family tree one?
Ancestry.
Yeah. When you get into ancestry, and start looking at, what's come down the pike, what's come downstream, what
am I subject to?
What have you inherited?
Yeah.
And versus what are you owning? Those are two really interesting words in this conversation. So I think that's a great observation as we invite people to this whole series. But for sure with Pablo, this person that wounded him deeply, and just like Mark, and we're going to see with Leo and with Sam, the other ones to come, oh my gosh. It's not always the same shade of blue.
Right.
But it's blue. It's a version of, it's some kind of, was talking with a man this morning about, the men that we work with. And he just said, it's amazing how far they can even travel from it, but they come back to this same ditch.
Yep.
And you can put up pylons if you want. Don't go down there. Don't turn that way.
Like what is the scripture that like a dog returns to its vomit?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's I don't know the context of that, but
what is that? Like, why do we do that? You've seen
Romans 7.
If you've been around dogs, they do that.
Yeah.
Which is just gross.
And you've been around men.
But you've been around men, and it's like, dude, what?
And women too. But it is amazing the cycles, even though. And it has a lot to do with another warfare conversation. But I think to the point of this, these are validating to that real theology of generational sin, generational curses, vows and agreements that you make, and how they actually bind you and become a force that usually is not reckoned with.
Right.
You're just subject to it. So I think for Pablo, this is another great story of overcoming. And I want to jump into let our audience kind of hear and see just some segments that we've pulled. Is the first one Caleb, mine or his? It's me? Okay. So we're just we're diving in several minutes.
Yeah, I pulled a segment and then found out you had already pulled that segment.
Well,
So
good.
was
I
like,
didn't know
good.
that.
Yeah,
That's good.
yeah.
So I think this first one's 4 or 5 minutes, maybe a couple minutes. Okay, second one. All right. So we'll jump in here, and this is the Wild at Heart series, session number 2, which is session number 3 in our episode series.
Ooh,
we did.
This
is Pablo.
I'm confused. This is Pablo. Yeah, this is Pablo.
My contact with my dad was very occasional. All he did was work. And I didn't get to experience a dad in the way that any boy longs to experience a dad. He was never affectionate towards me. He never gave me any words of love, of affection. I'm in my mid-40s today, and he's never said, "I love you" to me, not a single time. He began to drink a lot. And all the rage came out in aggression, physical aggression to my mom, emotional aggression to my mom.
I remember her describing putting herself between all of those threats and me and my sister, and she would be willing to take the heat on our behalf.
My dad would come and show up with his girlfriend. I know that there was a lot of infidelity in their marriage. I wanted to be a completely different man. I wanted to make sure that whenever I had the chance to marry someone, my life would be different. That I would not treat a woman in the way that I saw my dad treat my mom. My feeling towards my dad was apprehension and fear. He was never violent towards me, but I knew that emotionally with a couple of phrases he could shut my heart down. I remember coming back home and my mom would ask me, "What happened to you?" My answer to her is, "I don't know, I just feel like someone cut off my arms." That was my description of my experience with him. No one was teaching me how to fight or how to hunt or camp, nothing. My friends were sharing about how their dad had taken them to this place and to that place. And if people knew that I don't have those skills, that I don't know how to do these things, they're going to mock me, they're going to realize who I truly am, and I won't be able to be part of the group. There's something fundamentally wrong with me, and so I would try to avoid all the areas where I felt challenged and then be super nice and to avoid confrontation, to avoid conflict.
What'd you hear?
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Oh my gosh.
And I've seen this, I don't know, this is probably at least at this clip, and I've watched this 3 or 4 times now with different groups, and yeah, getting a little deeper. I mean, it's when we watched Mark, there was very little talk of any masculine authority, of any father. There was talk about the grandfather. There was talk about the father. But these are all stories that do have a theme about father wounding, a father's role. And for Pablo, it's a sad story of a dad who, he might would be one of those guys who'd say, "Man, I wish my dad wasn't around," because of, father wounds aren't hard to find or see when you have a man who is an angry drunk and who is scary. And then the implications of, and when I do get some time with him, his words are cutting. What's wrong with you? What happened?
He knew exactly what to say.
And I felt like my arms were cut off. I mean, that is a very, whoa. Not I got punched or, I felt like my arms were cut off. That's just.
To say that as a child.
Oh, when we talk about secure attachment, and so we've got this very insecure man. I mean, the result of that is leading to a very insecure, and back to the family and the generational part. I'm sure his dad had his own insecurities. That's why
Well, that's landed on me You know,
Go ahead.
First time. What's his dad's story? You know, and not in a way of excusing what happened to Pablo
yes.
or indicting him somehow, right?
Yeah.
Judging him. I just wonder.
Yeah.
Like, and what's so interesting is as we talk about generational curses and conversely generational blessing.
Yeah.
You know, for Pablo and his story, and we'll see a little bit more of it here in the next clip, for him to end up in a place so similar to where his dad was, gone all the time, drinking too much, infidelity, all of that, you got to go, wait a minute. I wonder what Pablo's dad's dad.
Yeah. What's in this family
Man.
that manifests itself generationally. And we'll see later, Pablo has 2 boys. and where he's going, what he has to go through to come to some places of healing and restoration to stop that almost automatically flowing.
Even with as hurtful as it was, even with as hurtful, as devastating, it cut my arms off. And the vows that came out of it, that Pablo said, he said it just then, I will never be that way. I will never be that way.
Yeah.
And still.
And it's funny that it's not funny, haha. It's so interesting that you say that because it's the effect of those vows. You would think it would be so deeply entrenched that he would never be like
no way.
that.
Right.
But when it absolutely operates just the opposite. Those things that we deeply vow, and to come to the vows, we've made agreements, and the shame in his life is already really a cancer at 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah.
And that's a good word for shame. It's a cancer that has power and debilitating effect. He had no confidence. Of course he didn't. He had nobody there to bolster that, to attune to his need. I didn't camp. I didn't know how to fight. You know, I all of those things. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have a very either a very angry or a very passive. That is where the road splits and where men go as boys. Some either kind of odd combination of the two, but one is usually more dominant through and from the father wounds and the mother wounds. And that moment, I don't remember if he actually says it, but that moment that a masculine heart says, I am on my own.
Oh, he says it, yeah.
Yeah.
He does.
I'm on my own. If that's at 18 or 16 or 19 or 20.
Mark said it too.
Or at 10.
Yeah.
8, 9, or 10.
Absolutely.
You know, did you see the picture before we kick the next one? You know, that's just a setup, I think, for our listeners and our watchers as to some of the undercurrent of this guy's story. And we're going to get to some later chapters in his story in this docu-film of him. But he said it, something's wrong with me. It's so interesting that the abuse from his father, it did not come out as there's something wrong with him. There's something wrong with my dad.
Nope.
I mean, that is the voice.
I don't
that's
think
the voice
I've ever
of shame.
spoken to a guy that says it that way.
Yeah, I looked at my...
Especially initially.
I was 8 years old. What's wrong with you, Dad?
What the hell's wrong with you? No, they never... It's
no,
always...
you can't.
And children that are a product of divorce, like he was.
Or volatile marriages.
I mean, they. But my point is, the kids inevitably say, what did I do?
What did I do wrong? Yeah. What did I do wrong?
Right.
What's wrong with me? Why did they leave? We're going to hear that in another story. The other thing I would bring up that was fascinating in the school picture.
Oh.
And if Andy and Caleb can actually cue that up and bring that back on when they can just show that picture. That is a sad boy.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't see it until, it was on there for 4 or 5 seconds. I was like, holy crap. Yeah. Not he doesn't like picture day.
There it is. There it is.
That is a sad boy.
Now, to be fair, he could be sad because he had to stand at the end of the line or whatever it is. But your point is that moment reflects in his story.
Yeah.
Like the other picture did too.
Yes.
Remember, and he's probably 14.
He's not really smiling. Yeah.
In none of his pictures he is.
Yeah.
you know, and again, you know, it's a really
Just an
interesting
observation.
window into, you know, I think he even started. He was looking through the photo album and he said, "I'm not sure I have any of my dad in here." He had to go to his
They had
mom's
one
house
on,
or something.
one on the farm or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Interesting
this
how
is the boy,
pictures-
right? This is the boy that's going to become the man.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the things he's reflecting on that took place.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Caleb, let's roll into the next segment.
I hated the man that I had become. And I hated that it had been exposed. My worst fears had come true. Found myself in this empty apartment, sleeping on an inflatable mattress, because everything that I had tried with all my strength to get was gone. Looking back into the story of my dad, I was repeating the story.
As much as I had criticized him and disliked his life, I was becoming a man like him.
Bro,
I mean,
I want to start weeping for that guy.
What a great segue to that next, just whatever that was, 90 seconds or 2 minutes. As we had said it in our exchange, that, you know, what I vowed not to become, I became. And even the pictures of his dad and that look of his dad and how much he looked like him in that particular posture in the last frame. Hate is a powerful reinforcement. Hated who I'd become, hated the man that I was, hated my life. I mean,
Hated my dad.
and very toxic.
I mean, oh my gosh.
In between the boyhood stuff in that clip is several minutes where he gets married, a beautiful woman, a beautiful heart, beautiful soul, and they were naive in many ways, as most of us are.
She shares a bit of her story
and
about her dad had nothing to say to her but hurtful things.
Yeah,
You're useless.
yeah,
I don't know why you were born.
yeah.
You know, and so
You're
then
stupid.
then Pablo comes along and
You're amazing.
right.
Yeah, yeah,
and they start off on this great trajectory. You know, we're gonna do things different. He said, I'm gonna work hard, provide for my family, be there for my children.
They dreamed together. They had
yeah.
dreams, and this was in South Florida, and he moved from Colombia to be with her in Miami, and then. So I think too, SJ, just worth mentioning is before that rock bottom, this apartment on an air mattress on the floor is some huge success. Like he gets a job,
making a lot of money, traveling a lot.
Yes, he in real estate, and he's entertaining, and that's when somebody else notices him and speaks to that. Broken. He's up to here in pornography at this time as well. He's married to a wonderful person, or at least that's how they depict it. And yet, pornography is another thread that he finds in boyhood. Makes him feel some really good things in there for anybody who is either challenged by, which is a lot of men, or is connected to, married to somebody who's, this is not about even the sexual reality of some of the things within porn. This is about certain kinds of brokenness that lend themselves to acting out in this unwanted way.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's at the root of it all is a desire for intimacy, and there's something broken. Either something breaks when you find pornography, or when it finds you. Either something breaks, or there's something broken, or there's a combination of the two that work together that just gets its hooks in you, man.
Yeah.
And that they talk about it. His mentor talks about it.
Yes, it's really good.
What happens with pornography is you have an opportunity for intimacy at no cost to you.
Yeah.
So it's
No.
What I mean is to engage with the woman doesn't cost you anything. But the pornography costs you everything.
Everything, and it costs him everything. That's where it takes him. And and then to be noticed. What came to my mind in this unwanted sexual behavior, this addiction that he has. It reminds me, because I've recently been in a couple projects. It reminds me of water. And if enough water comes and enough pressure comes, wherever the leaks are, in your engine, in your roof, in your backyard, in your
plumbing,
whatever, it finds its way.
Mm-hmm.
It's that. Usually too much of something, too much water, in a certain amount of time, and. He talks about the estrangement from he and his wife because she wouldn't join him, and it's not her fault, but she wouldn't join him in some of the things he needed to do for work.
Yeah, social circles and cocktail parties.
Because in her own story, she thought I have nothing to offer there. I'm not good in that place. I'm not safe in that space.
And she said I would have to be somebody that wasn't me.
Right, all of that.
I'd have to pretend to be someone. And, So which speaks to. Do you really want me? Do you see me? Do you love what you see? Because at the time, Pablo was communicating no because you won't engage with me in this thing.
So the money's up, the success is up, the esteem is up in that space.
And the loneliness is up,
and it's
too.
not enough.
Right.
That's right. It's not enough. And to be honest and fair, this is what Pablo does, what a lot of men do. I've done it. You take your questions to her. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't want to go there. She doesn't want to go on these trips. She doesn't want to be with you in this, when it's game day. Mm-hmm. She doesn't want to be the cheerleader or your teammate on the field. And so here comes this incredible storm of circumstances that end up creating the moments for Pablo's greatest compromise. Yeah. But he defines himself as a passive man and the nicest guy that you'll ever want to meet. Mm-hmm. And I think, oh man,
somebody wrote about nice guys who were nice.
Mm-hmm.
Might have been Chesterton or something like the
hollow-chested.
Yes, yeah. No, that sounds like Lewis. Yeah.
Yeah. So. We're going to jump into one more of Pablo's clips.
Well, before you
and
move
I want
on,
to get some content.
I do just want to say I picked that because I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember that. It wasn't an apartment. It was a hotel room. It was the worst moment, one of the worst moments of my life. Like, I went down that road. I did all those things thinking somehow I wouldn't end up alone in a hotel room, sitting at the end of the bed, wondering what the hell I had done.
Yeah.
Somehow I was going to be able to lie my way out of it, and like he tried to do.
Yeah.
And I'm so empathetic towards Pablo.
Yeah.
Because of those moments where you've got nothing to do but sit with yourself, think about not just your actions, but how did I get here? Like I said, I would never be here, and here I am.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is not your dad's story and your mom's. I mean, in terms of the generational things that we spoke about.
No.
But I did find
I
find it fascinating. I just heard a man share this. He said it wasn't about the sex. It was about the attention.
Hell yes, it was about the attention. No kidding. Absolutely.
It's a high bill. It's a heavy interest. It's brutal. But
the attention, the affirmation, same thing, that unfortunately Pablo fell victim.
So in this, I think we're going to the next clip, but I want to. So Pablo gets handed Wild at Heart. That comes in.
Mm-hmm.
He confides in somebody, and it's a mentor, or becomes a mentor, and that man really beautifully and what every man needs is a few corner men who are in their corner during the fight. When he's getting his ass kicked, when he's getting beat up, you know, that's, and there's very few people in the stands. You know, reminds me of some of our clips, you know, that we show from Seabiscuit or Cinderella Man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, cheap races, cheap fights, and before the comeback really even begins. And here the encouragement is, I want you to read this. And again, to John's credit and the Lord's work in and through John, I mean, this resonates deeply with him. And he sees, and obviously sees himself in between the pages. And yes, I've been could not take my questions to the beauty. Do you see me? Am I strong? Do you want to be with me? Am I a man? Mm-hmm. And early on in most marriages, that just, because she's there, it answers that. But if she doesn't keep up those answers,
mm-hmm.
and this is not the way it should be. I'm not saying that's the way it should
Right.
be. But if she doesn't keep up those answers, 5 years in particularly is the statistic,
Yep.
that's when more affairs happen, hers or his. So she can't take her questions to you, and you shouldn't be taking your questions to her. It's a recipe for train wreck. 10 years in, you know, now there's collateral damage with kids, and the whole kingdom starts to implode,
Right.
you know, with young ones. So I think for this, in Pablo's story, the intervention of a good man, a good friend, somebody who's in his corner, it's huge. And it's going to take a little while. It just takes a moment, right? To as you've shared, it's just a moment. The wrecking ball takes a moment. Have you ever seen one of those buildings come down?
Oh, yeah.
In a big city when they're going to build a new one?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, everybody clear? They don't get to do that in this.
Right.
There is not everybody clear. It's hit the button, boo, boo, boo.
Yeah.
And anybody in the building is damaged.
Mm-hmm.
So the reconstruction's what takes time. The deconstruction, right? Demo
Day is fun.
Bring a sledgehammer.
Yeah.
You know, throw crap into the
Right.
wall.
Right.
Punch the wall if
Run
you want.
through the drywall.
It's a bunch of men having fun, you know, destroying.
Yeah, demo takes a second, but yeah.
Yes.
Reconstruction.
So we're going to join this in Pablo's story as he starts to, as he begins his comeback, and even some of the things that are needed. So remember, passive, nice guy. He's talked about it earlier in that one. Didn't know how to fight, didn't know how to camp, right? All those things. So this is really interesting how God comes. So good. So.
Yes, you did something wrong. And yes, you're going to have to face the consequences of that, but you can. Let me show you how. There's a journey that I want to show to you. There's a path that you can take. Would you let me show it to you? And he gave me the book, Wild at Heart. I needed to go back and understand how my story had shaped me. It started with the understanding that the man that I had become was in great part the result of my story.
I had not received, as a boy, what my heart needed from a father. I hadn't been properly loved. I had not been validated, and I had not been initiated.
If the man that I had become was the result of the wounds that I had received, the message that came with those wounds, and then the decisions that I made to make life work, then could it be possible that at the depths of my soul, I had been created as a different man than the man that I had become? I became a Christian when I was 8 years old. And all of this was new to me. Maybe there is more to me than simply me being a weak passive, checked out man. I have come to believe those things because someone wanted to harm me, because evil had come against me through the wounds that I received in my childhood. So as I began to see life through those lenses, my heart began to awake again. And yes, I was fully responsible for my actions, but I had fallen into a trap. It was understanding that I had an enemy, and my enemy was not my wife. My soul was longing for something, and my enemy was placing before me a counterfeit. And it was to begin understanding that the passions and the desires that I felt were actually good. That I was created in the image of a God who loved those things, and adventure and passion and freedom, who wanted good things for me. But there's an enemy who is trying to kill and to steal and to destroy my heart, my life, my marriage, my wife's heart. And he's done a pretty successful job so far. That created a fire in my heart in order to fight for her and fight for us. I needed to recover my heart first. Around that time, I met this man who invited me to train Muay Thai with him. My immediate reaction was, Muay Thai? I don't know. I had never gotten into a fight in my entire life. I'm the nicest guy in the world after all. I needed to risk. I needed to move in the opposite direction that I would have moved traditionally. And so I accepted.
Right, so what I thought from just like a striking perspective tonight, one of the things that we see all the time is that your story shows up on the mat. Whether you're super defensive over stuff, you'll have a defensive posture there. If you're overly aggressive and overreacting in certain ways, it'll show up there. On the flip side, the things that you learn on the mat also show up in your story. So what you fix on the mat, many times you see being fixed in the rest of your life as well.
Come on, man.
Bro.
Come on. Should we go backwards this one from there?
Yeah, right. To
Come on.
The other ones and the results. I mean, I had not been properly loved.
Unfinished, unfathered, uninitiated, unvalidated.
Yeah, man. I mean,
I am so glad there's only a very few amount of men.
I was immediately thinking of a guy I know that said, "Man, my dad loved me so well," and all of that, and I'm going, okay, it's not an extreme story like Pablo's.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
I think it's actually it's more difficult for that man.
Yeah, it's a great point.
In many ways because it's not right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The way your dad didn't love you. But man, I had not been properly loved. Yeah, I think there's no way. It's 100% injury rate, man. There's no one that has been truly properly loved.
Yeah, I mean,
by our earthly fathers.
Even the all-star.
We're set up for failure.
Okay, I mean, I know that's not popular. It's not popular, but Stephen, my girls. My story, yes, as a father, but also as a son. Crap, it's just true that there's a setup there, and in every one of our stories, we have to repeat. We need to repeat some of the significant steps in the Gospels, and so restoration. If you're just a little bruised, or that's what you think. Or if you just didn't really have that much, I'm not saying that you shouldn't look harder. I mean, that's what Rafiki says to Mufasa, look harder, you know, but I think that is a part of the masculine and feminine journey. You just don't get through this unscathed. And whether it happened to you outside the home, that's what stole, you talked about steal, kill, and destroy. If that's what brought soul damage from an uncle, an aunt, I mean, there's so many perpetrating characters in people's stories. It's just very, very uncommon to find somebody who somehow, you know, wasn't. And it's not, let me just say, because I think Pablo does us this favor too. Mostly, SJ, it's because the enemy's that good.
Oh, yeah.
At doing what they do.
Oh, yeah.
To bring collateral or just head-on damage to your soul, so that you will, you know, grow up and become someone who repeats some of, you know, these patterns. So
there's nobody that can take second watch for you. Like you would have to, you cannot in this realm be on guard 24/7.
Yeah.
Especially as a child.
Yeah.
You don't know to, and you don't know how to, and then nobody showed you when you grew up, and so you're fumbling around in the dark, and you're going to let your guard down at some point. You're just going to. And
there's this masculine and feminine journey that your mom and dad are supposed to help you take. And if their story has no evil, they're not going to talk to you about evil at an appropriate stage in time. If there's no villain in their stories, if there's no wounding from their father and mother, if they're disassociated, if they're disoriented to their story, how in the world are they going to be mindful to see that in yours?
Yeah.
So I think this is a great story. I think of Pablo moving from the false self to the true self as he hits bottom and literally drowns there. I mean, it's over. He is subject to whatever she really decides here. And she says earlier in that, she says, he wouldn't fight for me. Yeah. No, he wouldn't fight for you. He doesn't know how to fight. That's what he's admitted to. Right. And so Muay Thai.
Right.
I mean, as we wrap it up, bro, that was one of my favorite lines in the whole thing. When his sensei is on the screen, he says, You bring who and what you are to the mat.
Your story comes out on the mat.
Your story comes out on the mat. I mean, first time I heard that, I'm like, oh my gosh, man. We got to show that clip.
Oh my gosh.
We got to show that clip to men all over the place.
I've never fought Muay Thai before, but I know that's true.
True. Yes.
I know that's true.
Yeah.
I was a bouncer in a bar. I know that's true.
Yeah.
Because I brought the false self-aggression to those confrontations. It's the same thing. That comes out.
Yeah. So
when you get into that
so
kind
when
of a
you're
confrontation.
when you're passive, you can get away with a lot of passivity in day to day. You just can.
Shrinking
but you
away,
can't in
hiding.
the ring.
You can't when you're.
You can get away with a lot of aggression.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of aggression. You know, a lot of intentionality, a lot of bulldogging.
Mm-hmm.
But on the mat, all you need is that one opponent who knows how to counter while you're flailing. Just wham.
You'll wear yourself out.
And so our opponent's that good. And I think Pablo's a great story of oh man, the last thing here is what I love about Pablo is he didn't try to fit the new into the old. He says, and I believe this is true for men who are going to make a comeback, I've got to do some things differently.
Yeah.
If you rush the field over and over again, then you probably need to learn to stay back.
Take your helmet off, sit on the bench a while.
Watch. Be more calculated, be more cunning, be more thoughtful, be more fine. And the guys that just stay there, Lieutenant Blythe and never Private Blythe.
Private Blythe, yeah.
And never advance because
Lieutenant Dyke.
Yeah, all of those characters, man.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate this this offer. I think from pornography, from passivity, from emasculation, so many symptoms that so many men deal with. Those are the symptoms.
Yeah.
What is the cause of that? And that's really between good resources like this. I think Heart of a Warrior. I think King Me. I think Wild at Heart. These are great
Rendezvous
resources.
Project in the context of marriage, for sure.
Very, very helpful. So,
yeah,
just want to invite you to get into these series. I really invite you to get into them like we are. Get into them with a couple buddies.
Yeah.
Let them facilitate some conversation. Just let's watch half of it. What did you see? Let's watch the other half the next week. But
I'm glad you said that. We want to ask you, our listeners, our watchers, what did you see?
Yeah.
As you're watching, not just these clips that we're sharing, if you go and watch the full 50, episode,
50 minutes.
Yeah,
and we're giving them 6 and 7.
Right.
You know.
We're giving them a taste, but go watch the full episode and then come back and tell us what you saw.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think in the comments.
Yeah.
Be great.
So thanks for joining us on the Exploring More podcast. We'll continue our series next week with, we're going to look at Leo, part 3 in the Wild at Heart series, part 4 in the Exploring More podcast series on the Wild at Heart series. Thank you, John Eldridge and team. Beautiful work. And we'll see you next time on the Exploring More podcast.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoe.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoe on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoe on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.